Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I will show how I use sentiment analysis on data that I collected from Twitter. So without further ado, let's begin. So before we begin, let's talk a little bit about sentiment analysis. So what is sentiment analysis? It is actually an NLP or natural language processing technique used to determine whether the text given is positive, negative, or neutral. So basically it's the process of detecting the sentiment, whether it is positive or negative in the text. So for example, the first statement here, I love this quote, it shows that it showcases or the analysis will detect that this is a positive sentiment. For the second sentence, I don't like this movie, so the analysis will find out will result in a negative sentiment. As for the neutral sentiment, is in the form of this third statement right here. I'm not sure if I like the new design, meaning that it's neither positive or nor negative. This is like an example that can be found on social media, such as in this case is from Twitter. This user right here, they commented on the service of this offered by Postmates. Based on the statement right here, we can probably tell that it is a negative sentiment, meaning that this person is giving a negative review for the service by Postmates. So what sentiment analysis can be used is for companies to find out the reaction or the feedback they receive from users of their products or services, such as an example right here. Another example that we can look at is this one for Airbnb. This user right here, they have like a we can call it a negative experience with Airbnb's customer service. So perhaps Airbnb can read this feedback from this user right here, and can try to improve perhaps their customer support team in order to provide better services to their customers or users. For sentiment analysis in Python, we will be mainly using the text block module. So I will provide I provide the link to the documentation for that module in the description box. So basically what we're going to do later is to create an instance of text block, and then we can access the sentiment property to find out the sentiment of the text. We will see later on that there is the output for the sentiment method that we will take a look later on is a tuple containing two values, which is polarity and subjectivity. I will explain everything later while we're doing the hands-on exercise. So this is like a screenshot of the documentation from that website, from the official text block website. You can see that there are installation guides and also tutorials on how to build, for example, for how to build a text classification system, and also the topic of our video today, which is sentiment analysis. There are other things that you can explore in this website, so feel free to do so. Like I said, there are tutorials as well, so maybe you can have a look at that as well. For this analysis, I will be using Jupyter Notebook, but I think you can follow along using the Google Colab Notebook as well. So the first step is to import all the dataset and the libraries or modules that we will use in our analysis. So to briefly talk, I'm going to briefly describe the modules that we will be using. So the first one is Pandas for reading our data. The dataset will be in a CSV file format. So for me, I think it's easier to use Pandas right here. And next is the RE module for regular expressions that we will apply on our text later on. Next is NumPy. And then there is the function word tokenize for us to tokenize the sentences, and it is imported from the module nltk.tokenize right here. And then what we've discussed earlier is text block. This text block function, this text block class here from the text block module, we will use it to analyze the sentence to get the sentiment. And lastly is the matplotlib.pyplot for data visualization. We'll run this to import our libraries. And then we're going to import our dataset. So the dataset that we will be using is this one right here called the tweetstest.csv. This CSV file was actually extracted using art programming because I encountered like a few problems when trying to extract it using Python, but still I almost get the result that I want, because basically I'm using this data set from my thesis project. So my thesis project is actually focusing on tweets that are written in Bahasa Melayu. However, when I'm trying to extract those tweets, I didn't get the result that I want, meaning that I don't get a lot of Bahasa Melayu tweets. Instead, I have to set the language argument to Indonesia or Bahasa Indonesia. And well, basically Bahasa Melayu and Bahasa Indonesia are quite similar to one another. So even though I set the argument as Bahasa Indonesia, there are still some Bahasa Melayu tweets getting extracted as well. So I saved it into the CSV file and then put it inside a folder called data, and we will be reading this CSV file into our notebook here. The second dataset that we will use is this abusive.csv right here. This CSV file is available publicly on GitHub. It was originally used by two Indonesian researchers when they're trying to detect hate speech and offensive language on Bahasa Indonesia tweets. And this CSV file contains a list of abusive language in Bahasa Indonesia. So I often take a quick look to this CSV file just to make sure that the words are almost maybe let's say more than 90% of the words in this CSV file right here, even though it's in Bahasa Indonesia, it is also similar to Bahasa Melayu as well. And obviously when we read in this CSV file, it will be in the form of a data frame. So we will convert this into a list using these .values.toList methods, and then save it inside this variable abusive words. And the last data set is this Malay stop words. It's a TST file containing stop words written in Bahasa Melayu, and I will store the words inside this list called stop_words here. After we've imported the data set and also the library, we're going to do some processing on our text. And so if we take a quick look at the data frame that we have just imported, you can see that there are 90 columns, and they contain a lot of perhaps very useful, but for now we are not interested in looking at these other columns. What we're interested for is this text column right here, which contains the actual text or the actual words from the tweet itself. So you can see that this is just the first 5 rows of our data set. And so to collect we're going to look at only the text for our sentiment analysis. So we'll extract only the text column and convert it into a list format and store this inside this text variable right here. when we look at the first three tags, you can see that these three tags right here has been extracted and put inside this list. Next is we're going to remove any unnecessary information. Like we're not interested in looking at them for our sentiment analysis. The first one is the URLs. This URL right here, like HTTPS something something. For this, we will use the RE module and the function sub, where we're going to substitute any text that begins with HTTPS and followed by all those random characters, and we're going to substitute this into white space. For this, we will use the for loop, and then the results will be appended to this empty list that we create up here, remove the URL. And then we're going to remove the hashtags. I'm not sure if it's available out here. For example, we're going to remove this hashtag bersama kita vaksin here. But we're not going to remove the entire text actually, because maybe there is like important information that can be gathered from this hashtag right here. All we're going to do is to remove the hashtag symbol. So as just like what we did with the URLs earlier, we're going to create an empty list, and then we're going to append to that list a similar function, similar step as we've done earlier, which is to replace any instances of a hash symbol into a white space. Next is to remove any username or user mentions inside the text. Again, similar to our two previous assignments, two previous steps, but this time we will be substituting here this @ symbol. Usually in Twitter we'll mention the other usernames, or we'll mention other users starting with an @ symbol and then their name. In this case, we'll put all the alphanumeric characters inside the square bracket, and at the end of the square bracket is this plus symbol right here, meaning that we want more than one or more instances of this pattern right here. So we'll substitute it with white space, and we'll append the result to our empty list right here. And then as you can see, like for instance in this third text right here, there are Unicode characters, and we're going to remove this as well. Also, we'll substitute any Unicode characters with white space. So like this processing, the pre-processing part is partially done. That's how I can just describe it for now, because now we're going to tokenize the sentence, and for this we will use the word tokenize function, but we have to convert the text into lowercase, all lowercase. For this, this is how we'll immediately put it inside a list using a for loop, and also inside the list. So for every sentence inside the list of the clean text earlier, for every sentence we will apply this function word tokenize, which we converted into lowercase letters here, and store this inside this as a list inside this variable right here, tokenized words. So if we look at like the first 3 sentences inside this list, we can see that the words have been tokenized and also been converted into lowercase letters. So this process might actually take a while, because I think I forgot to mention that there are actually nearly 17,000 tweets inside our dataset. So if we look at the first 3 sentences here, as you can see, like the first sentence is this one right here. It has been tokenized, meaning it has broken into individual sentences, and also like with punctuations as well. So yeah, this is our tokenized words. And now we're going to remove stop words. For this, we will be using the stop words variable that we've imported earlier from the txt file. And again, we will be using the for loop and appending the results of this into another empty list, which if we see for the first three sentences, we're going to compare the first three sentences. Like for example, let's say that in this first sentence, it says, bila saya nak dapat vaksin ni? When will I get this vaccine? So bila translates to when in English. So when the word bila is considered as a stop word, so obviously it has been removed because it starts with saya, I. When will I get the vaccine? So the word when is removed. That is like the translation in in English. Next is to remove those punctuations. We will looping this and immediately store this inside a list right here, which we will append to our to a new empty list we create up here. And we will use this dot is alna, meaning it is alphanumeric. We'll only store the alphanumeric tokens inside our clean text list right here. So to compare from this one, this is a punctuation, right? So obviously it has been removed from this clean text. And then we're going to recombine all these tokens into one string, each into one string. So like this first sentence right here, saya nak vaksin ni, and so on and so forth, this is actually in one sentence, so we're going to combine it into one. For that, we will be using again a for loop, but this time we will be using this function, this coding expression, which is a white space dot join, and for every sentence, or sorry, for every tokens inside the clean text list earlier, it will be joined together into one string. So let's say, for example, for 3, this is the fourth sentence actually from, the fourth observation from our data set earlier. So this is actually considered as like the clean version of our text. Now that our text has been, clean, has been pre-processed, we can proceed with our sentiment analysis. The way I do it is to first create an empty data frame using this pd.dataframe function, and the columns inside inside that data frame is first text, which is the final text, the text that has been cleaned right here, for example. Next is the polarity column, and for now we will fill it with zeros. So for this we will be using the np.zeros function, and the shape of the length of this column right here, the amount of values, the number of zeros that will be repeated under this polarity column is equal to the length or the number of text that is available in final text. Meaning the number of zeros will be around nearly 17,000. As I mentioned, there are nearly 17,000 observations or tweets that is in our data frame. The same goes with sentiment right here. So if we take a look at this data frame, this is what we will initially get: polarity and sentiment. And the test is the clean process one that we have done earlier. As I mentioned, nearly 17,000 observations. Here we have 3 columns. So now we will be using the text block function. So we will create this instance of text block, and we'll provide it with each of these processed texts from the final text list. And to get the sentiment, we use the sentiment property as I mentioned in the slide earlier. And the output for the sentiment property right here is actually a tuple. So if I can show an example right here, let's say that we will look at the first sentence or the first tweet from our data, and let's store this inside a temporary variable called ads right here. And if we look at ads.sentiment, you can see that it has 2 outputs. The output of this property right here is, like I said, is in the form of a tuple, and it is the values of polarity and subjectivity. So polarity is a floating point value between -1 to 1, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, if the polarity is approaching to a negative value, it means that the text has a negative sentiment. For subjectivity right here, it is also a floating point value. So the higher the subjectivity is, the more likely that the sentence is in the form of a personal opinion rather than it is a factual information. So if you recall, let me show the original text from the data frame. I think it was for alright. Okay, so this is the tweet from the first sentence. So it says, bila saya nak dapat vaksin ni. The text right here is actually shared by the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation. He was acting as the head of the vaccination program here in our country, Malaysia. So he was sharing this through his official account, like the plan for the country's vaccination program, where hopefully when the data is extracted back in April. So the data was extracted back in April. So this tweet was sent out actually, if I'm not mistaken, on the 10th of April 2021. So in this text right here, it says that the country was hoping to vaccinate nearly 80%, like most of the population here in Malaysia will be vaccinated by June. This is what the tweet was talking about. It is written in Bahasa Melayu, so like that is like the rough translation of this tweet right here. And as you can tell, it conveys factual information. It's not a personal opinion. It's not like this minister right here, it's not like he was saying, oh, I believe that it will be so and so. No, actually he was talking like in the form of facts, So when this is in the form of a fact, so the subjectivity value here will be 0, approaching to 0. As for the polarity, it is also 0. So when the polarity is 0, it means that the sentence is most likely to be neutral. So that is why here in our for loop, we will be looping through each of the texts in our data frame, and then we will look at the sentiment of that text, which is the first tuple value right here. And then we will store this inside our column called polarity. The column that we created earlier right here. And then we will try to figure out the sentiment of that text. So we'll be using the if-else condition. So if the polarity is definitely equals to 0.0, we will assign the neutral, this neutral string right here, to the sentiment column of our new data frame here. But if the polarity is less than 0, we will consider that sentence to be in the negative sentiment. So else right here definitely means that if the polarity is greater than 0, so the sentiment is considered as positive. Running this will take probably a few minutes because the size of our data set right here. So I will skip the time ahead until the code finished running. So for in my computer, it took nearly like 3 minutes to run this previous code right here. And then if let's take a look at this new data frame that we created earlier. So we can see that the sentiment column, originally we set it to 0, right? But now it is set into a new value, which is neutral. From what we can see right here, it seems as if all the text, all the tweets that we have collected seem to be in a neutral sentiment. However, if we take a look at the distinct values of the sentiment column, we see that definitely the most statements, or nearly all of the tweets are neutral in terms of sentiment. However, there are also positive and negative sentiments as well. We can actually see this more clearly when we try to visualize it. So what I did is to first collect the x-axis and the y-axis. The x-axis are the values, the index values for our sentiment column right here, which is neutral, positive, and negative. And also obviously the y-axis will be these values that we have collected earlier. So using the plt.figure function, we will first instantiate like an empty bar chart. We're going to plot a bar chart, and we'll change the labels to frequency, and then also set the labels of the x-axis as these index values right here. And then we're going to add these values, the number of tweets that convey each of these sentiments right here on top of each bar, so that we can see it more clearly. And this is like an optional argument right here, which is to save our chart right here to our local directory. So here, as you can see, like I mentioned earlier, most of the tweets seem to be in neutral sentiment, and between positive and negative, most of the tweets seem to be in the more positive side rather than the negative side. So basically, this is the end of this project. If you have any questions or there are parts that you don't understand, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, or you might have learned something new from this, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this in the future. Thanks for watching!